From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya. Tonight we are delving deep onto the science fiction film called Chappie. Came out in 2015, and that is what Space Brains episode 80 is all about.
81.
81. Episode 81. That's right, because it's not a classic, even though I honestly feel this could be a classic, this film.
We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. In this episode, we'll reveal what we thought about the film, the ins and outs of narrative, plus a nice deep dive into the specific piece of science that the filmmakers are proposing. Neill Blomkamp wrote this with his wife, Terry Tatchell, back in 2015 in 2 weeks,
2 weeks.
Whilst they were on the set of Elysium.
Oh, on Elysium, that's another good one of his. And look, this is my opportunity to say, as a warning, spoiler alert. We're going to be going into all of every detail of this film. So if you haven't seen it, go back, watch it, enjoy it, and then come back and listen to what we have to say to see if we get it all wrong. That's your challenge.
That is your challenge.
Find out if you get it righter than us.
Righter, yes.
Righter than us.
No, that's right. Now, we're in Joburg. Joburg. Which Neill also set District 9. He's one of his previous films. Brilliant film. We did it on a previous episode. Go listen to it. Go watch it if you haven't. And then listen to the podcast. Otherwise, warning. Chappie is set in the near future, again in Joburg, where crime is basically totally out of control. And the police add this mechanized police force. When one of these police droids, Chappie, is stolen and given new programming, he becomes the first robot with the ability to think and feel for himself. What was your number one takeaway from Chappie?
My number one takeaway from Chappie is sometimes rap is good.
Rap is always good. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about here is Ninja and Yolandi.
Yeah.
Ninja and Yolandi are a rap pair from Joburg.
They are.
And they use their own names in this. So I'm wondering if that was a part of a promotional thing for this film in South Africa.
Maybe.
South Africa. And if you're from South Africa, get in touch with me and, let me...
Apologies, because we're going to try to sound like you with our Australian accents all night long.
I love Sharlto, and he was Van der Merwe in Vickers in District 9, and in this one he is Chappie.
He's Chappie,
and I reckon we're going to have to do Elysium at some time pretty soon. And in Elysium, I can't remember his character's name, but he is a mercenary killer in that one.
He's the bad guy in that one, isn't he?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's right, by memory. It's been a while since I've seen that film. We do need to add that to the list.
I love his accent. Every time I hear him talk, I have to try to talk a bit like him.
And the prawns.
Oh, the prawns love the cat food. I don't know why. I entertain myself at times.
You do.
But yes, so what I was getting back to was the rap performers in this.
The Dire Antwoord.
There are plenty of times where musicians have transitioned to film and have been a bit awkward.
Yep.
There have been a couple of rare occasions where they have not. And I think Ice-T does a good job. This Yolandi and Ninja.
Yeah, they're great.
You wouldn't know that they weren't professional actors full time.
That's right.
They did a great job in this, and there's a couple others as well in various other cases, but we're not interested in them because they're not in Joburg. The violence in Joburg is pretty good.
I've heard Martin Scorsese, the great director, say it's all about casting, and I think with casting Dire Antwoord, as those characters. And I mean, they didn't even change their names. There could have been a technical reason for that, as you were just saying, but the setting and the type of characters they were in Chappie, they just looked perfect for it, didn't they, to begin with? Like,
oh, yes.
They didn't even have to open their mouths, and they looked like a gang. They just fitted that role.
They looked so rough. Like, if you met them on the street and...
You'd be a bit worried,
You'd be thinking, they're either, like, sort of meth head gangsters or rap performers.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, I'm sure there's some crossover in various places and cases.
Yeah. And that's the context, right? If you saw them come off stage, like if you were at a music festival, fine.
You'd be going, hey, that's
Diane Wood. That's
fascinating.
That's great. They look like rock and rollers, you know, they look like rappers, whatever, and it's like they fit the crowd. But then if you met them on a dark alley, you'd be a bit worried, I think. So it's like casting, I think Neill, you know, whatever the deal was behind that, I didn't actually find any reasons online. If you know why the reason's out there, or Neill, if you're listening, just get in touch and let us know. But I think that casting was a really incredible choice.
Oh, it was, and I love that.
Yeah.
I really liked the fact that without even knowing that they were rappers, I loved them in it.
Yes.
And I thought, they're really good. I'd love to. And I looked up, what else have they been in? I thought, these guys are great. They would, they would really fit this sort of almost a cyberpunk. You can imagine them being in a Blade Runner or something.
Definitely, yeah.
But it turns out I just got lots of shots of them on stage. Well, okay.
Yeah.
They're performers.
Definitely.
Fantastic. So that was my number one takeaway. Sometimes rap is good.
It's always good, Surrey, especially in sci-fi.
I will reserve myself in that. So tell me though, is this hope, warning, or experiment?
Experiment. So I think this is a what if, and my justification is because I feel like there's actually a couple of what ifs in this story arc. So to me, it's like right at the start, it's like if we were in a city where violence is that extreme, the what if is like, what would the police do? Maybe the police get machine guns and, there's a curfew. But in this context, being sci-fi, well, they brought in robots. There's also the what if of then, instead of like we've watched a few AI, and the traditional AI stories, the AI becomes human. But in this context, the what if is like, what if the AI got stuck in a gang, and that really plays out. And to me, that's the sort of, there's a real heart in this film because it's, what if an AI was not just coming alive in a science lab or a military experiment? It's actually like, this is AI on the streets in a gang, And so to me, there's a couple of clear what ifs in this story, which to me makes it an experiment. I mean, in a way, I think most AI films or stories are probably experiments because it's like, the arc is, what if we give a robot, human-like intelligence?
Well, even things like the Terminator is, it's a bit of a warning, but it's also sort of like, here's one way that AI could play out. AI becomes God. The machine, likewise, is similar in many ways in that they created this general intelligence. And it learnt and grew under a certain set of environment. Go back and listen to hear what we had to say about that. Go watch the film. It's pretty cool.
So
and this one, it's like, again, it's a slightly different take on it, and I like it too.
And Neill in this film, Chappie, takes us to that. It's a real little microcosm of it. So rather than the Terminator where robots take over the world, it's like one robot. And what would happen if someone hijacked that one robot, not just the system as such, etc. So
it's interesting because what would happen to the robot as it developed, but what also would happen to the gang that took it on, which I like, it really changed the gang too.
Yeah. So was this the first time you've seen Chappie?
No, this is the second time, but the first time I watched it would have been back when it first came out. So you reckon 7 years ago now?
Yeah, 2015.
It feels like longer.
It does feel longer than 2015.
It's funny because I'm thinking like Lord of the Rings, that was just really recent. That's like 20 years ago or something. But this one here, it's funny because this is one of those movies that I watched and then we said we're going to do it again. So I've seen it. I thought, I don't remember. And I really didn't remember the ending of it.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what mindset I was in when I first watched it, but I remember enjoying it. I thought it was pretty neat.
Yes.
it was hot after watching District 9.
Yep.
And watched this one. I watched it this time with my wife. Often I'm watching these sci-fi movies on my own.
Yep.
Because my wife she's a busy gal and has things to do. And often the time constraints don't allow us both to watch at the same time. Of course. And then there's also the incessant note-taking and commentary I have to make, which sort of can...
You start doing the podcast during the movie, and of course your wife goes, hang on a second,
it can grate a little. Yes, it does grate a little bit sometimes.
So, wifey, is that Hope experiment? Can we just watch it?
So we talked about some of the sci-fi here, but was there a single element in here that you really liked? Was it Hugh Jackman's hairstyle? That was very sci-fi.
It was, wasn't it? It was great. Well, yeah. I guess it was probably supposed to try to match Ninja and that, hey? Like,
it was a bit of a mungy mullet, wasn't it?
But it was a mullet. It was like he's an Australian soldier, ex-soldier.
It wasn't a classy mullet either.
No, it wasn't a classy mullet. I think it definitely made him a bit tougher. I will just, on a side note, before I answer your question, I like the Hugh Jackman here. Like, it's an interesting... Because he's such a, Wolverine hero, Max Steel, whatever... That, most films, he is the protagonist, he's the hero. Yeah. Whereas here he's playing a minor role... He's like a bad guy in amongst a whole bunch of them. Yeah, I really liked that his character was this little niche character and seemed to have a lot of enrichment. And he was just so jelly belly, wasn't he? Oh. He just wanted to take Dev down so badly. So Dev is the one that makes the Chappie robots. So I think for me, a sci-fi element was that answering that what if of chucking AI into a gang. And I loved those little... intricacies that he picked up, those behavioural intricacies. So, of course, there was the swearing, but I loved, like, the nose swipe. I loved...
He doesn't have a nose.
Like, he doesn't have a nose, and he's wiping his nose. I loved how he held himself. I love that they give him the bling, and he likes the bling. Like, they made such a concerted effort to give Chappie a real personality from if a child was kind of being raised in this environment, in a gang-like environment, and they just hit it so perfectly, I reckon, in this film. Online there's some reviews, good and bad. People lost a little bit in this film. They got a bit lost, or they didn't quite feel it was realistic enough, or they didn't like the way Chappie kind of developed. But to me, that when you break down that sci-fi, I really liked that he took it down that path, and they gave it enough personality. And when I first watched this, I didn't realize what's his name, Sharlto, that's it. I didn't realize that it was actually someone playing that. Like I remember after the film googling and kind of going, how did they do that? Because is it just like a Pixels movie? They just animated Chappie in there, and if they have, they've done it really well. But when you kind of realize afterwards, it'd be like Gollum, right? That's how they did it, the same way they did Gollum, and you're just like, yeah, he really nailed this robot character Chappie, didn't he? Like they really gave him an element. He's very childlike. You go through those 3 or 4 days as he grows and he's realizing the world. And to me, I loved that element. So it's more behavioral science to me in this film.
Yeah, it was nice. I agree that Chappie's movements and so on, I thought it was good that they made him so human. I was going to say human, but it's not really. They made him so alive.
They made him so alive, yeah. And the fluidity of, I suppose, that thing they invented for Gollum, the green suit with all the little buttons, the good old Weta Digital over in New Zealand, Peter Jackson's company. They came up with that technology for Lord of the Rings, and, a filmmaker like Neill Blomkamp years later can use it for something like Chappie, and it's done so well. Why is this a science fiction film?
Well, there's the obvious element of there being robots, and we always consider robots to be science fiction. Yeah. But in the larger scope, though, it is as you said, it's a what if. I mean, this really becomes a very classic science fiction, which is to take, let's take some element of scientific inquiry, which is intelligence, artificial intelligence, and mechanization, and what if it occurred in this particular way? And again, if we took the science element out, so let's say Chappie was like a normal person, like a child. Yeah. It couldn't work because Chappie is alive for 4 days. Yeah. The action of this movie occurs rapidly, and Chappie develops very quickly. And much faster than human and radically. And the ending, of course, you couldn't have the ending because the ending of this, and I'll go into more in this in the science section, which is it's something that excites me quite a bit, and it's got a very strong history going on there. But you simply couldn't extract the science out of this movie and then still have any of the same relationships. None of the story plot points would make any sense.
No.
So it's a science fiction film because it takes its science element, it projects it into a somewhat realistic, and I know I use that in quotation marks, of course, but it is, under some version of reality possible.
Yep.
And makes it a little scenario that explores the implications of it.
And it's what Blomkamp seems to like to do, is just take that. Joburg is very violent. I think some of the statistics at the start of the film have probably been pushed a little bit more, but he likes it because he does it in District 9 as well, doesn't he? It's this is an issue, and then what if you chucked a science fiction element onto it?
Yeah, what would be the science fiction resolution, I guess?
Yeah, and because in this example, it's gangs and murders happen in Joburg. They happen in most big cities. It's part and parcel of living in mega cities. I know Joburg has a big violent crime street with guns and gangs. So it's what if? What if we chucked in robots, and we'll come to that in a minute when we get into those plot points, but there's definitely, the question in here is humans versus robots, as in the value of human life versus the robotic life, and then you bring in Chappie, so that question definitely is happening.
You know what I like about Joburg in this is it took me back to the 1990s vision of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So if you look at Predator 2, is kind of no, we need to do that one. It's actually quite a good sequel.
Yeah.
It takes that Los Angeles as the concrete jungle. And it projects from the 1990s, and we've got a lot of these movies, like RoboCop was another one,
that was another one,
where it takes this idea that the American crime streak, it was kind of reaching a crescendo towards the end of the 80s into the 90s, and they were imagining, if it keeps going this way, Los Angeles is just going to be almost a war zone without a control. The police are going to lose it.
And Demolition Man plays
and
off
Demolition Man,
which they've already done.
But as it turns out, they did turn a corner and the crime rate dropped drastically. And there's any number of theories on why that happened. But I guess Neill has taken this opportunity and said, well, you know what? I'm going to push that same vision of what if Johannesburg were to be extended like that, So, it's got a bit of a crime problem, but it's not... it's not outrageous. People are still living there quite happily, living their lives, But what if you were to, enhance all of that and give another 10 years of it not being contained?
Right.
What's it going to look like? You're going to have, gangs running around with machine guns. But there being open warfare between the police and the gangs as opposed to, precise raids where the police take down the gangs. Yeah,
exactly. So we'll pause for a second and talk about the film festival.
Oh, my goodness me.
So we're getting closer. We did have to postpone by roughly about a month. We went from Saturday the 21st.
Yeah, can't work.
We're printed everywhere and online, but now it is June 18th. So if you are listening to this podcast, it is going to come out before the festival. So I think on our last episode we said if you're listening to this, we're past the festival.
This episode has been released a couple days late due to COVID
some of these issues
and people, I know, being unconscious and not being able to get together, and it's just what a complicated time. It's been harder to get things done than Christmas time.
I think so.
And so it's a couple of days late, but it's June 18, which is going to be basically sort of a week and a half, 2 weeks away. You do have to buy tickets ahead of time. We can't guarantee there'll be any at the door as you turn up.
We'll try to get your ticket.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be able to. The ticket sales, if they're available, will be there at the door. But if you really want to go, get your tickets now online.
They are selling.
Because otherwise you could turn up and find that there are no tickets.
Be very disappointed.
That would be sad.
Be very sad because we'd love to have you there.
We want everyone there.
So, grab your tickets. We've got the workshops are all still locked in. We did have one change of speaker, the author. We went from Amanda Bridgman.
Yep. She's gone off to some of the Supernova comic convention, pop culture convention. Yeah. So she's a popular woman, you can't guarantee that she's going to be around if we don't get her on the 21st, so the 18th. But that's okay. We got Samantha Murray.
Yeah.
And she's a really award winner. She has produced a great many short fiction in popular magazines that you would know and love, collections and so forth about the place. She has enormous experience in selling short stories.
Yep.
She has enormous experience in developing worlds and plot points and amazing writing experience that she's going to share with us.
Yes, and that's what she is running. She's running a writer's workshop. So, if you're a writer out there interested in science fiction writing, or you just like reading lots of science fiction writing, that's a workshop for you.
Yes.
So get your ticket, come on down, go to the Space Brains website, go to the Space Brains Facebook, Instagram, wherever, or Mandurah Performing Arts Centre website, and you will be able to buy tickets. Grab them while they're hot. June 18th. Okay, so let's move on to a bit of plot stuff, Surrey, and some of the key visual elements of Chappie. So we're going to get stuck into areas to do with symbolism, narrative, camera, lighting, sound, editing, genre, social commentary, and some of the themes and messages. Where Chappie was written, as I said, by Neill Blomkamp and his wife, Terry Tatchell, who's quite a well-known writer now. She also writes kids' books.
Oh.
More recently, she's been writing kids' books. So, and she's been a writing partner with Neill. As I mentioned earlier in the show, believe it or not, as they were making Elysium, they wrote Chappie in 2 weeks. Incredible. The film stars Sharlto... Well, you say his name better, don't you? Sharlto Copley, Dev Patel, Hugh Jackman, Ninja, Yolandi Visser, Jose Pablo Cantillo, I think, and the one and only Sigourney Weaver.
Sigo.
We've seen so many of Sigo. I did not say that. It was actually filmed in Joburg. I love that. And then I think there was some post-production done back in Canada. It had a budget of $49 million US, and the box office broke $102 million. It's not his biggest box office success. District 9 has the biggest ratio, from profit to the cost, but Elysium actually has the higher amount, but it had a much bigger budget.
We had Matt Damon.
I had Matt Damon. You just got to pay him about $30 million probably to get him out of bed, don't you? Sorry, Matt, if you're listening.
Yeah.
How much does it cost to get you out of bed?
We'll pay
I'm interested.
$50. Will that work?
No, I'm not paying him $50. He's coming on the show. We, anyway, like to break down all narratives into some common elements that you can find from all good story and script writing teachers. You'll probably hear about this if you come to the festival. We've got people like Campbell, Snyder, McPhee, Field. Google them. You'll find lots of information if you're a wannabe writer or learning how to write or want to know the structure of features and novels. Go check them out. Really great teachers. And we like to break it down into that same area. So there is a 3-act structure, Surrey. What happens in the first act very quickly?
The first act is introduction. It is inciting incident. It is the debate and choice of Act 2. So what does all that mean? It means that we need to see what the world is. What's the opening image? What do we see here? And then we move on quickly then to meeting all the characters, hopefully seeing what some of their life is like, maybe guessing at what their problems might be, because we don't want things to be too easy. And then we have the inciting incident. And the inciting incident is the important... I think this is the really important point.
It's so important.
Of Act 1, because this is what kicks the story off. This is where the audience, is given a question they want answered. And this is that moment at the very first part of the film where, as an audience member, you go, that's what this film is going to be about.
Yeah.
And it may not be entirely about that, but that's where your interest is piqued. And I watched this fantastic film. It was actually quite surprisingly an Amazon original.
Okay.
And I have to say, a lot of the Netflix and Amazon originals have not been as tightly edited and sharp as, like, say, films that have had to go into more competitive marketplaces. Yeah. But this film, it's called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things.
Right.
And it has, right on the 12-minute mark, it's got a really sharp, inciting incident. I'm not going to give it away because I want you to go watch this film. I think it's actually worth watching. It's well written. It's very interesting. It's a fantastic take on Groundhog Day. I know this is basically Groundhog Day introduced this genre.
Yeah.
They even reference Groundhog Day in it, so they're well aware of what's going on.
Interesting.
Right up front, but right at the 12-minute point, there's an inciting incident, like straight onto camera, and you go, oh, there's the story.
There's the story.
And then you're off. So the inciting incident, super important. And then the debate, though, this is the bit where it's like, okay, so this inciting incident happened, this thing has happened that has changed things. But is it something that it's going to change our lives? Do we want it to change our life? Or are we afraid of that change? Do we not want it? Is there some reason to not pursue this change? And fortunately, they always do pursue the change. But you need to have that debate, because if you don't have the debate, it just falls flat. You don't get excitement. You don't see a reason for why that. You don't get drive in the plot. I think is a term.
But also, it's very human. Like, can you imagine if your world turned upside down? You don't necessarily just fix it straight away. So, for example, if you were told your inciting incident is that you're suddenly got a illness that's going to wipe you out in 6 months' time. Some people might then go into a debate. What do I do?
Yeah.
Do I just keep doing what I'm doing? Do I quit my job? But you don't just straight away do an action. You would think about things. And that's the point of the debate. Like, the character's world should turn upside down so severely that there has to be a debate.
There has to be.
Yeah.
And that it does. I think I'm going to use this term from now on. It's what drives the plot.
Yeah.
And that's what plot is as opposed to story. Without this drive, this because, it's just a series of events. And it's like listening to someone describe their dream.
Yeah.
And you know how dreams are really boring to listen to?
God, they're so boring.
Because they're just a series of events. There's no drive to them.
There it is, right?
But anyway, after the debate, and they choose Act 2. Yeah. And in Act 2, we get what, Mark?
Well, we get a whole series of scenes, what you'd call the fun and games. So it's really investigating that plot, isn't it? So it's playing with their decision. So they've made now a decision, and they're going to go down it. So let's take a character who has found out they've got 6 months to live. During the debate, they weigh up some different options, and they decide that, hey, I'm going to go out and live in a commune, in the wilderness where no one wears any clothes, and you spread honey all over your body, and you apparently can cure any illness.
Yeah.
Right? So they've chosen that as their solution to dying in 6 months. And so we go out, and the fun and games is, of course, them being at this commune and spreading honey all over their naked body. All right?
Sounds like a comedy.
Yeah, all right? It's a comedy. Maybe it's a sci-fi as well. And then we're going to find out that the community is maybe not so happy after all, or so healthy after all, whatever, right? So that's the fun and games. The fun and games is the protagonist has made their decision, and we have a series of scenes which are the fun and games. Blake Schneider loves, and I love how Blake Schneider describes it. It's the trailer of the film. So it shouldn't give it away. It shouldn't give away the ending of the plot, but it gives away the fun part of the film. In Chappie, it's really obvious. It's Chappie being trained by gang members.
Yes.
And so that's the fun and games. We have an AI birthed into a gang. And what would a gang do with an AI robot, And there's such a great scene in this where he then steals the cars, because he's powerful, he's huge, he can rip a car apart, and it's just so funny. in a very action-packed film. You know, like there's a release of the valve there in Chappie. So that's the fun and games. We of course get to the midpoint. Midpoint is when it has to get a bit more serious. As I said, guy in the wilderness trying to get healthy, realizing this place isn't actually very healthy after all. So the midpoint is quite often a bit of a down point, a false victory. The idea is you're right smack bang in the middle of the story. They've tried stuff. They've had a bit of fun with their decision. And now things are getting a bit serious. And from there, things get more and more serious in a way, or worse. And quite often the expression is the bad guys close in. Their life doesn't go so well. You know, so if the guy's really sick, now he's even more sick. The honey didn't work.
Oh.
The community he was in was actually fraudulent and had to be closed down by the authorities.
Turns out they harvest organs.
Yeah, and they squeezed that and it wasn't honey that he was putting on his body after all.
For genetic experiments.
Yeah. And he was going to be squeezed. And so he's back to basically square one again, right? So it's like all is lost. Quite often something dies. In this particular story I'm talking about, what might die is the hope that he was going to live is dead. So something is lost. There's a very clear death in Chappie. And then that leads into, hang on, I'm here. My life is crap. My decisions were crap. You know, everything I've done hasn't really worked out. And that's what we call the dark night of the soul. And in that searching of your soul, you're in the cave. The character's in the cave trying to figure out, well, what do I do next? Do I lie down and just die? Or do I try to do one more thing? And, you know, you might call it a light bulb moment or whatever, but quite often the journey that they've gone on has taught them something that in that darkness they realize, hang on, I could try this. And they try it. And that's actually what gives them a new plan. And they kind of need to take those steps. And that takes us into Act 3.
And Act 3 quite clearly is the finale.
Yeah.
It's where we see the term is, you know, gearing up, heading out on their plan. They've Neo asked for guns, lots of guns.
Give me lots of guns.
And we get excited because Act 3 it's almost a new fun and games.
It is,
isn't it? It's like, now we're going to get some ass kicking, or now we're going to get some resolution. Now we're going to find out what was really in the honey. Because there was something in the honey.
There was something in the honey.
It wasn't curing people. It was making them grow extra ears for athletes who had lost their ears in tragic basketball accidents.
That's right.
This movie needs to be made. I think it sounds
Space Brains production.
Sounds a bit like a Will Ferrell movie, though.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, but the plan doesn't work. It's almost. I mean, you can even sort of look at it like an Act 2. You've got a midpoint. You've got this point where their first action, we get a bit of fun and games. Maybe they start kicking a bit of butt. Maybe they start winning the court case, whatever. And then there's a reversal. It turns out their plan, which was based on what they'd always done, it just doesn't work. And this is where they, remember. Sometimes in these films, there's a literal flashback to something someone says. Use the Force, Luke. Yeah. Like bang, straight in there, and then a mini debate sometimes.
And quite often it's a self-doubt, isn't it?
Bit of self-doubt. It's a bit of like, really? But I always thought I knew what I was doing for this plan. Turns out it's not quite right. And again, this is one of these compressions of humanity. We need to, in real life, nothing quite works out the way we want it to. But if we're resourceful and lucky, we can pull it off. And that's what happens in most films, unless it's a real tragedy, in which case sometimes they try their last ditch effort and it's just not good enough. And how they do this finale, how the director and the writer pull off this finale is how you leave the film. And if you leave the film feeling something and questioning things, then they've done the right job. If you leave the film thinking, I swear there was enough room on that bit of wood for Jack and Rose to both float.
There was.
James Cameron won. James Cameron, he succeeded. He made the film because you left there going, it was so sad. Did it have to be so sad?
Yeah.
And all that debate and sometimes anger, it's kind of, that's what art does for you.
Yeah.
And in the finale happens, we have this final image which gives you some shot of how life is now. How life is now after Chappie. We get some sort of an idea of it. And it's usually mirrors a bit of the starting. So we see like a start, scene where the world is currently, and then we get a scene at the end, which lets us know how that start is now different.
Yeah.
Perfect. And it's lovely.
It is. And that's what we expect. And we're disappointed when it doesn't hit those beats. That's the thing.
That's what I mean. People try, and some films can be quite experimental in the way they handle these beats.
Yeah.
And sometimes they blur a bit, and some of the greatest films made do that. They play with time, the order in which the beats occur. The story happens out of order in order to present the beats the way they need to be.
That's fine, but we don't want to see weak beats, do we?
Yeah, we need to see an ending.
Yeah.
Like if it just
sort of... to have a satisfying ending.
If it just sort of trails off, you kind of like, well, was that the end?
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe, if you're talking real art house type stuff, maybe sometimes that's the intention. But if you're talking about a movie where people will be coming back to watch it and pay money for it, which is usually the ones we're watching, you need that. You end up following these things.
You do. So it's not so much about a happy ending, it's just more about a satisfying ending.
Yes, the ending has to hit you somewhere and make you feel something.
It does.
If you leave a movie without feeling something happiness, anger, love, joy, sadness, it's not quite right.
And really all those other things, the temporal order, the special effects, the stars that are in it, I'm a demon, doesn't really matter. It's how it makes you feel at the end and how you walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chappie. Do you remember what happens at the very start of Chappie?
At the very start of Chappie. We
have some prawns.
It's very similar to District 9.
It's very similar.
So we get these sort of sound bites of like interviews, sort of documentary style as it brings it in. And I can't blame Neill for using this again because it is so effective. How many films have we seen where it's zooming into the rotating globe and then you get little cuts away to stock footage and news reports?
Yeah.
It's a great way of compressing a whole bunch of information in an interesting way.
So what Neill does, I think, really cleverly is he's really quick. It's very fast. This film in particular, Chappie, that opening, like the opening 10 minutes, we get delivered a whole bunch of setup really fastly. And I think that opening, it's only about 90 seconds of the opening of the film. We're basically brought into this very violent Joburg, and that's done through the same style of sort of like mockumentary, interviewing a professor, interviewing a police person, I think, interviewing the robotics or whatever. Like very quickly, within about 90 seconds, we're in a very violent Joburg. Yeah. And I quoted there's like 300 murders a day is the news line. And it's like, wow, 300 murders a day. They are a violent city in this film, right? And we've got this very doco style, but he cuts from that doco style and there's a nice tracking in shot of the press conference of the police chief, I think it is.
Yeah.
And he's addressing the media, he's addressing the public that from today, and it reminded me a bit of RoboCop. I haven't seen RoboCop in a long time, but it had a very RoboCop feeling. I don't know if you felt that, but my memory of RoboCop, because it's like from today onwards, things are going to change. And he has this lovely long tracking shot onto Chappie.
Well, one of the scouts.
One of the scouts, yeah. And it's a very sort of epic, it's not so much about the humans, is it? It's about the robot.
Yeah, and we do get a nice sort of gang fight at the start well, where we see these scouts in action.
Yeah.
And this is the opening image. We see, a gang, which is, Ninja and Yolandi, they rock up to do some sort of a transaction.
Yeah.
And it's a dissatisfied transaction. So these two are going to fight, or there's a threat. So you got to get $20 million or something.
Hippo is the bad guy there.
Yeah. Hippo, he's unhappy and he's going to shoot everyone if he doesn't get his money. And, it's a fairly classic way.
He's a scary looking dude. He's
gang
a big
sort
dude.
of confrontation. Yeah. But then the cops turn up.
Yep.
And, suddenly there's explosions. The gangsters are really serious. He had explosives all set up to cause confusion.
Yeah.
And then there's, assault rifles firing off, and then the scouts come pouring in, and you see that they're very powerful. They're resisting bullets, and they're being used as shields to help the police.
And to me, that's the point to note with this is like they're you notice the cops treat them even a bit roughly. Like they push them ahead, they stand behind them, they do it. So you see how effective they are. But I also think that this is where the theme of the film starts, in that it's sort of like that human versus robot. What is human? Which is very similar in these films. That's what I'm noticing in all the AI films. It's kind of like, who is more human, the robot or the humans?
Well, and it's interesting to think of that when the robots, they're pieces of equipment.
They are.
Often referred to as toasters in various films.
Yeah.
And it's you sort of think just because it's shaped roughly humanoid, it makes it no different from the laptop I've got sitting on my desk here. Which
and you would hold up if someone had a gun in your face.
Well, not my laptop. My laptop's beautiful and gorgeous and deserves life.
Yeah, and what happens is a real bloody shootout. And
it's a great battle.
Very fast. It's a great battle. There's explosions. There's a police helicopter which gets shot down, and then they say we have to get out of here. There's a car that kind of has a rocket. There's a rocket launcher involved, isn't there?
What I like here is the lead up to this battle. We have Scout Unit 22 is brought in for repairs. And they, it's his little ear. He's got these little rabbit ears. It's very cute, very expressive, of course. And they take one off, and then they don't have any. They've got to repair them quickly because suddenly they're called all units in. Yeah. And so they put on like the ear from one of the test units. So it's orange painted. Yeah. And so now we can characterize.
Now we can tell
this one.
This one is the important.
Yeah, this one here. And I like that because it introduces another philosophical point, which is it's done in Robin Williams' Millennial Man. Yeah. Where it's this story, the old parable of the ship. It sets out from England, and it's all painted blue. Everything is blue on it. And as it travels, along its trade route, it gets across and gets damaged in storms. It pulls in to, Jamaica, and it gets some repairs with red pieces of, ship. And then it gets a bit damaged, and as it travels around the world, it's slowly repaired until by the time it gets back to England, there's no blue pieces left at all. They're all red because that's all they've had. Yeah. And the question is it the same ship that's set out from England or a completely new one? And, and here we have Chappie, his ear gets taken off and a red piece is put on. And it's sort of interesting, this idea of, hang on, is that the same? How much can change about this robot before it's not the robot that left the factory? Yeah. It's a different robot.
It's a different robot.
And, that's not a big theme in this, but it is one of these things of change and how there's an essence, a soul, a spirit, which it's introduced. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm reading more into it, but the fact that it was that red piece, which is from this particular story of the ship. Some people also know it as my grandfather's axe. Right. Where, I inherited my grandfather's axe, but, over time the handle broke, so I put a new handle on it. Yeah. And then it got so blunt and resharpening, I had to replace the head. Yeah. And then you go, well,
is it the same?
Is it actually my grandfather's axe? Yeah. Because it's new handle, new head. Same difference.
Well, you could question that philosophy because Chappie is going to change, right? Like we know that that's the story. He's going to grow, but from a story point of view, especially film, you're putting a visual element on him, aren't you? A red ear, so he just looks different to the other scouts straight away.
Well, it's why a lot of characters you see. A whole bunch of, what's that movie? Which one of those Star Wars movies? All these white stormtroopers, but then there's one that's silver.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
so just to give us that point of difference. But quite often the good guys, which Chappie is, like they'll add those elements because it's, it's like stickers on a backpack or something, right?
A bit of flair.
It's tattoos on Ninja. Like it makes them. It gives them an individual characteristic, makes them stand out. Henchmen in a movie about, you've got to give them all little different traits, don't you? Maybe a pirate patch.
You need the big one and the little skinny one.
Little skinny one, and then you need one that's got a patch on.
And the one that wears a hat.
Yeah, so they do stand out and they remember. But in that scene when he does the ear, just to also add a character trait, the technician goes, "Oh, you're always getting in trouble.
Yes.
You're always coming back here, so it's straight away kind of setting up this particular scout, which at this point in time, he's not Chappie, but it's kind of alluding that he's attracted to trouble or something.
There's something special.
Like there's something a bit different about him because, as we know, they should all be like microwaves off a supply chain, off a chain where it's just all the same. There shouldn't be a difference in them, should there?
And sure enough, in this battle with Hippo, it's Chappie who takes an RPG to the chest and knocks him down.
Yeah.
And that's how Hippo escapes in that case, where he manages to cause enough sort of confusion and damage.
Now, is that the catalyst, Surrey?
I think that's...
Or is that just before the catalyst?
No,
what was your thinking?
The inciting
or the inciting incident. Sorry, we're calling it.
The inciting incident is. I see. This is one of those movies where there's this. See the map of tiny perfect things. There is one clear, like 1 or 2 second shot where you can go. That's it. Yeah. This movie, it's a build up.
So I think Neill is hiding it a little bit for you.
He gets sent,
but it's there
for scrap.
Yeah.
So Chappie is like, this one's no good. His battery is fused.
Reject.
Send him off for scrap.
Yep.
So that's the beginning of it because you already know he's special.
Yeah.
This robot. And then when old Deon, I think his name is the character.
Deon,
goes and gets his artificial general intelligence, comes back and says, bing, consciousness.dat is complete, which is like, okay, that's kind of cool. Just it's called consciousness.dat.
Yeah.
That's kind of, at that point there, as an audience member, I go, Chappie sent, Unit 22 sent to scrap. It's no longer needed for anything. And he's got this intelligence program.
Yeah, it's an
That's where you sort of go, okay, I can see where this is going now.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if Chappie is the protagonist, he's dead by 10 minutes into the film, but then he's brought back to life.
Yes.
So, but by dying, he's brought back to life in a new way. And the other thing is, we're clearly told straight away the reason why he's defunct is the battery has molded into his guts or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So he's kind of not repairable. And I love it. It's like a reject sticker right on his face as well.
Yeah.
So that to me is kind of like the inciting incident, like the moment, because as a character, because the film is called Chappie, it's about it. But I agree that it's not as clear cut because then it's like you need these other moments to make that happen, don't you?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. That's the start of it. But the moment as the audience member, I go, aha.
Yeah.
Because you're going, he's sent off to scrap. And you know there's something special.
Yeah.
But you're going, where is this headed? It's got you interested. But it's because it's only moments later that he gets he goes home and his other robots and then he's ding, conscious not that, it's finished. That's when as you put two and two together and you go, oh, that Unit 22 would be the perfect test vessel.
Try it in that,
Yeah.
Which he does. So so this to me is the debate: is that he takes him, so he sort of steals him because he goes to good old, what did you call her?
Sigo.
Goes to Weaver and he says, like artificial intelligence, consciousness, philosophy.
He's not a good salesperson.
It
could do art.
And it can do art. And she's like, you do realize, you're talking to a robotic company that sells robots to the military and the police. Like, we're happy. We're happy. I like that she says that. It felt like a real, you know what? This film really feels like a real workplace, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like the way that even him and Hugh Jackman are just in those little cubes. Quite often in these films, aren't they? Like they're off in like white, perfect Apple-styled labs,
and they've got their own office with 6 screens
and receptionists and all this kind of stuff. Whereas in this film, they're just like literally cubicles. It's very realistic, I think. Tetravars, I think.
Well, see, the thing is, I would have thought he talks about art and beauty and philosophy, and she says that we make weapons. If he'd said, a robot that can come up with art and philosophy on its own can also come up with tactics and strategy
and new weapons
without human input, which means that we don't have to risk humans. We can have entire tactical units led by one of these.
Yeah.
And then that's suddenly go, hang on, that's dollar signs. Like to replace entire units of humans,
they're
going to have to buy a lot of these.
Yes.
Yeah. But he's an idealist, and he doesn't say he's not interested in that. He wants to make a robot artist.
So anyway, he steals the chassis of the Scout 22 or whatever it is.
I think the stealing it is the choosing act too. So the debate is he's wondering whether he should steal it. No, he's looking, he's thinking about doing it. At some point there, he could have backed out and just taken Sigourney Weaver's character's words as, okay, I'll just have to wait for another opportunity. But then he goes, nah, and he nicks the robot to install it.
Right.
That's where he's chosen to go on his way.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you're out there listening and you've watched Chappie yourselves, maybe let us know, because I disagree with that.
Yeah, there is a later moment which could also be arguably.
To me, the reason why I said what's the inside incident is I do feel like it's a bit unusual in this film, and that is fine. It's still, because if it is Chappie, maybe it's him dying, maybe it's him being rescued by Deon. Like, what is the actual moment, right? But then, to me, the debate is, you're right, like him saying to Sigourney Weaver, I've got a new idea, her rejecting that. Should I steal it? How am I going to... Like, you could see on his face, he was like, how do I make this happen? And realising he could steal the parts, the one that was discombobulated, whatever you want to call it. So he steals it, and to me, that's great. And his plan is to go back home and do the operation, right? And it would have been perfect. But being hijacked... And then the Ninja so he gets hijacked by Ninja and Yolandi and America. Being hijacked from them stops his plot, which is great. And then he's forced to make another decision, which is, well, does he bring this robot to life? And because that's what they beg of him, don't they? They say, do it, or they don't beg of him, they're going to kill him. And so to me...
Not that he seems terribly concerned about that.
No, and that's the scientist, isn't it? Like, no, But the fact that then because there's a real pause, there's a lovely little close-up, isn't it, on the keyboard where he presses Y to input the consciousness into the Scout, Chappie. And but he could have not done it, because I don't think they would have been able to figure out how to do it. So he could have just not done it. So to me, that's and then the fact that he's done it and it's worked, that's Act 2.
Yes.
That's then now the fun and games.
Yeah, and that's, I think I can accept that argument. That's not a...
But if you're out there listening, let us know. Do you agree with Surrey or do you agree with Mark? Let us know. Be interesting. We should set up
and we do have some great fun and games. We immediately have a time clock. We've got 2 time clocks.
We do, don't we?
One is Chappie has 5 days and Hippo has demanded they've got a week. At the very start, it was a week to do it. So there's... And that... becomes shorter as we go along, but 5 days is how long we have for Chappie's battery to last, and his battery can't be replaced. Yeah. So we've been told. Yes. Apparently can't be recharged either. Yeah.
And it's a very, like the gang are very unstable. We don't know what they're going to do with Chappie. That time frame doesn't seem real. And even straight away, Ninja is not really into like having to train a robot. He just wants to get the money.
Yes.
And so this is where we do have this kind of breakup of the gang. Yolandi sees Chappie for what he is, because Deon says, it's like he's a baby. He's like a child. He's got to learn. And so Yolandi takes on that real motherly role.
Isn't it sweet the way she takes him under the wing and...
A little Chappie.
Calls him Chappie. Oh, your name is Chappie. Yeah. I'm Mummy.
Even that line, she's like... does America say he's like a little chap or something? And then she goes, it's Chappie. And Deon's like, oh, no, you can't call him Chappie. Like, very, like, that's a silly... She goes, no, you're Chappie.
Deon probably want to call him, like Galileo or...
Yeah, something like that.
One of the Ninja Turtles.
No, my name is Chappie. And we have this great thing that he says he wants to come back to train him. And they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe. But, not expecting him to really probably come back. And this is the fun and game. So he does some painting... He beautifully paints that rusted old V-dub, doesn't he, out in the sun.
We get him trying to shoot a gun.
He's talking like a gangster.
Yeah, he learns from America how to swagger.
And do the nose swipe.
And incorrectly say rude words.
Yeah. And he's got this debate, as like little kids do, like, you shouldn't hurt anyone. And then so they're trying to also say, well... what if what if someone was hurting you? Would you hurt them back? It's the questions kids ask, right? It's those philosophy questions of, if someone punches you, are you allowed to punch them back? Or, what if they're attacking mummy?
Yeah. How far will you tolerate someone's actions before you take action?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a whole bloody field of debate and philosophy. It's called the paradox of tolerance, if you want to look it up.
Yeah.
And it's that whole point that essentially, if we were to say we should never commit violence, we should tolerate all points of view and all behaviors. We should be totally tolerant.
Yes.
Okay. The problem is then that someone will cheat and they will do something like just murder all of their enemies or anyone who gets in their way.
Yep.
And you go, oh no, I'm going to tolerate that. And you know what ends up happening, of course, is the people who just kill all of their enemies just take over, and the only people who survive are the people who also kill. And so you lose tolerance. By being too tolerant, you have no tolerance because everyone ends up becoming the most awful.
Yeah.
So you need to have some. There's always some line to draw.
There is,
and that's where the debate always is. As how much would you let someone hurt you before you physically restrain them?
Yeah.
Or and then when you do that, what do you do? Because if you let them go, they'll just start doing it. Like when you're talking serial killers, like psychopathic serial killers, if you let them go, they will just kill again.
Yeah.
So at what point do you just say, well, we have to deal with this permanently? And it touches a bit on here where Chappie is conflicted with this. Fortunately, though, he is a child, and they come up with, you don't have to shoot a gun. You just use a knife. Put them to sleep. They like it. They actually like you doing this. It makes it very peaceful for them. Which, as the audience, you can immediately see this is not going to be good. This is going to result in some twisted moment, which is very cool.
Which he shows the danger in the moment, doesn't he? Because he goes to America. You want to go to sleep?
Whoa, no.
I'm not tired at all.
No.
And then so Ninja's, he's had enough of the fun and games of it, and he decides to, Chappie, you want to see the real world, and takes him out into the real world. And there's this great sequence here where, we're kind of like Chappie's in the back seat of the van, and it's very childlike, and it's shot through the van, and he's looking at the billboards, and it's like an internet sign. What's the internet, and he's looking out, and there's you can see the graffiti, and you can see cars going past. It's a very much like a kid taking in the world for the first time. And I reckon it was shot really nicely.
So is this coming to the midpoint?
Well, it's getting close, but I think it's still a little bit more. But Ninja takes him, he wants to teach him in a different way that the world is not kind, I think, doesn't he? The world's not nice. And so, because he's saying he can't be violent. And so he takes him out, and there's a group of thugs, and he goes, just kicks him out of the van. You walk home. And these thugs start going, it's a police robot. They're frightened. And then they realize, oh no, it's a bit different. What's wrong with him? And Chappie's going, I'm just hello. And they just start beating the crap out of him, don't they?
Yeah, chuck up Molotov on him.
And so, he runs away. It's a very soppy, slow motion filmed scene. As an audience, you can't help but feel for him, because he doesn't retaliate to these teenage thugs.
No.
And then on the way back, Vincent, who's Hugh Jackman,
that's his name. Yeah, I just in my notes he's just Hugh.
Good old Hugh has been sort of scoping out, and we've seen a bit of this, but it is a bit minor. But his jelly belly's come into the foray, and he's been scoping out what the hell is Deon up to with this robot. And this scene, he finds Chappie walking back and kidnaps him.
Yep. Takes the guard key out of his skull.
Yeah, and he wants the guard key, which is the software, I suppose, or something like that.
It's the encryption lock.
Yeah, encryption lock of everything. He cuts off his arm.
Yes,
which is a very brutal scene, isn't it?
Dismembering him.
Yeah,
yes, and this is that line we're talking about.
Yeah,
where does Chappie draw the line? And when is okay? So they pulled the guard key out, and Chappie's like, I don't like that. That's sort of delicate in there.
Yeah,
but then his arm gets chopped off, and then Chappie goes, that's far enough.
Yeah.
And he throws them off, and he doesn't continue that. He could have just killed them at that point.
Killed them all, yeah.
But he throws them off and kicks his way out and runs for it.
Yeah. cripple.
and I think this is now again debatable exactly what this midpoint is. The midpoint is either here or in a little bit when Deon buys a gun. So it depends on your point of view here, because on one thing, things have gotten very serious now. So Chappie's been robbed of his childhood.
His innocence, yeah.
So the good times have sort of come to an end.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the start of it, because then he goes home and Mum, which is sort of the B story,
wraps him back up, protects him,
looks after him, and they put a new arm on him again, like as another coloured arm.
Red arm.
So now we're getting another difference. And then but Deon buys a gun. So this is like Deon who doesn't believe in violence. Deon who just went with these gangsters and wants Chappie to do art and things. Now, if he's gone, okay, it's gun time.
Yeah.
Everything has suddenly gone, okay, now it's not just playing around. Now things are serious. Which leads us, though, to a little bit more. It's kind of the next level of fun and games, isn't it? So we had all of here's Chappie learning to be who he is, and he's developed now. You can sort of say he's established a personality. He's kind of a pacifist.
Yeah.
And he realizes there is always a point where you've got to draw a line. And Deon has likewise gone, okay, my ideals of having an artificial intelligence which teaches humanity how to love is not working out right. And then we get into now Chappie's criminal career.
Yeah, so
as the plan gets hatched on how to make enough money to pay Hippo back.
So to me, and again, it'd be great. So Surrey's kind of saying that that's heading in after the midpoint. To me, it's like, and I didn't pause it, so I don't exactly know the timing. I might be off, but to me, when he returns from the man in the van, Vincent Hugh Jackman, so he calls the mummies, the man in the van took me to cut my arm off. It's like the pedophile idea, right? Like, yeah, it's cool. But then it kind of come back and they regroup, and Ninja gets scoffed, and then he wants to teach him the martial arts. And he says the plan is that we need to get the money, we need to get the cars to get money so that we can, or is it to get the drugs and then get the money? To get the guns, to then do the heist. And he's saying, I'm not doing the heist, But then, to me, it's still the fun and games is that car sequence, because that happens next. And I just think that there's too much fun in that.
It is a bit, isn't it?
To be on the other side of the midpoint, but I could be wrong. But because that is sort of the sequence of those scenes.
Well, you can sort of see that's Chappie moving to the darker side. Up to then, he was all, there's still a whole possibility that he would be entirely innocent and nice.
But the way that scene is shot with the car, stealing the cars, it's done in a really funny way. Because, he's like,
you're a bad man. You stole my car.
He just trashes the car. He just beats the living shit out of the car. So and he doesn't hurt anyone. He steals cars, and that's bad. But in the sequence of it, and I think it's more like you've done all this fun and games, and then now it's like, okay, well, how far could we push that? Do that, because then also I think Deon gets the gun. We go into the midpoint. Vincent, has the guard key, and he uses that, and they go to that big Vodafone circular building, don't they, to buy the guns?
Yeah, it's not called Vodafone. They had a different name, but it's Vodafone.
Whatever it is, but
Vodafone probably refused to
you notice
support.
In that, it's like they have that moment with the dead dog and the live dog, and Ninja says, "You either are a live dog or a dead dog."
And this is where he sees his battery, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he goes,
I'm going to die.
I'm going to die. So he's realizing he's going to die. So to me, the car scene is the end of the fun and games, and then it's kind of like rolls into that they take the cars to that game, and that's like, now it's serious. Like, you are going to die. And because he even says, I don't do heists, and he's like, and then Ninja says, but you're either the dead dog or the live dog. Like, what do you want to be?
And it convinces him that we will use the heist money to get you a new body.
Yeah.
And transfer you.
And then at the same time, you're back at Tetravol, Vincent then plugs in the guard key. So this is kind of like, this is going down that bad path to me. Sorry.
Yes. And he uploads genesis.dat, which again is ironically named, because Genesis, as we all know, is the first book of the Bible. It describes the creation of the world. and creation of life, but it's used to basically disable all the scout units, and which causes riot. And the gangs go, oh my god, the scouts are gone.
Free.
We're only dealing with normal humans. This is party time. And which, when you look at it, you think Genesis, except you realize though that Chappie also disables, and Deon brings him back in here.
So, but just before that, they do the heist, right? Do they do the heist then, or do they do the heist after
One moment, please. So
no, they do it after that.
Yeah, Chappie confronts Deon about the battery.
Yep.
Because Deon tries to get Chappie back.
Yep.
After Chappie learns that he's going to die, and Chappie's like, if you're my creator, why did you make me die?
That's right.
And sorry, that didn't go very well.
No, that didn't go well.
I'm sorry. I apologize to any and all peoples who may have been offended by that, which should be all of you. It offended me.
And now you're continually to offend more races by.
Well, no, I'm allowed to do this because I am basically.
Now you're just being an old white man, aren't you?
Yes, because I'm an old white man. I'm allowed to offend myself. So he confronts Deon about the battery, and Deon says, "Well, you're going to die, but you get to live."
Yeah.
And and this of course never works for anyone. No. If someone says, I'm going to die of cancer this 6 months, covered in honey, find out it's not going to cure you, and he confronts the cult leader and says, yes, but these past 5 months you've truly lived. And you're like, I'd actually kind of like another 40 years would be good. Yeah, please. And particularly Chappie was like, but I should be immortal. Which is, it's kind of Hugh, after this confrontation, Hugh uploads Genesis and Chappie fritzes out. The gangs go wild, but Deon pauses like Chappie before, and drags him back to the lab because he can fix him. And isolates this Genesis.dat before it can be removed.
Yes.
So we've got evidence here, and Hugh and we see this is where we're introduced to this helmet, which can read consciousness. Well, it can read the mind, so you can control Moose. Moose.
Which is this giant thing from RoboCop, isn't it?
It's the RoboCop, Ed 209, I think that's in RoboCop,
Similar thing, but it's
a big, oversized, armoured destroyer.
Yeah.
Not at all what the police want. No. I don't know why they're trying to sell it to the police. No. That's straight to the military. You'd think
the military would want it.
Yeah, you think so. But Chappie, of course, having spoken to his mummy about life is what's inside you. It's your spirit. He sees the potential here.
Yes.
And he goes, if I can read my consciousness, I can go to a new body. And they see, there is the new body in there, but that's when all the cops come bursting in, and they have to run for it.
They do, but he takes the helmet.
He takes the helmet with him. Yes.
So then back at the lab, Chappie manages to start playing with the helmet, doesn't he? And he, gets, he figures out, he plugs it into all of the kind of devices and stuff that Ninja and that have, and he actually able to read his consciousness.
And he does it and shows Mum.
And so, she has a play with it, and he's like, so that's kind of cool. There's a little upbeat there. And then Ninja's plan is to we've got to do the heist. And so you're going to get a body.
This is one of these little up points where you see a glimmer of hope. We go, he's worked out he can transfer himself.
Yeah. So
and we're going to go get the heist.
Yeah.
And with the money, they can get the new body.
Probably get a new body, yeah.
And everything's going to work out, and they're going to live happily as a family, move to the suburbs, get a dog, probably a robot dog. And could you imagine Ninja living in the suburbs? You would not want him as a neighbor.
And we have this they go off to do the heist, but how it's been shot and edited, it's quickly jumped cut into the heist. So we have these I think it's like a real rev up of them going in the car, and then it's just like 2 or 3 cuts on the music. The music's cut out. And they've because the thing is, Chappie could just overpower the heist vehicle. Like, we don't really need to see that again. And so what it does is it cuts in when they're unloading the truck.
Yeah.
And, of course, he's, like, got one guard and he's, you go to sleep, and stabs it, you know. And,
he's throwing his little throwing stars at them.
And then he's the little throwing stars, that's right. And then he's got it, and the guard is actually, like, pleading for his life, and there's a real pause there, isn't there? That
I know that was the creepy moment, I think, where he says, "Are you feeling sleepy?" And you think, as the audience, you go,
"Is he just going to kill him?"
This is not going to be good. No. But the guard, he says, "I don't want to die." And Chappie stops.
Yeah.
And you see, he's a smart robot.
Yeah.
And the connections are forming, going, Sleepy doesn't want to die.
Yeah.
And he goes,
"What do I do?"
Daddy said. But, and so he runs off and leaves them there. That's fine.
Yeah, so he doesn't kill them. So we're happy as an audience. So, and they filmed, as this chaos is happening in the city, he's filmed robbing the heist vehicle, which then back at Tetraval, is it Tetraval? Whatever they are. That gives Hugh the sort of moment to kind of Hugh come into Sigourney's office and say, "Look, he's stealing shit. You're not going to be able to stop this robot without another. You need a robot to stop a robot." And she gives the go-ahead that he can use the moose.
Moose.
Moose. He should have done something like that. Like, moose, 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 moose. Right. So anyway, he does. He goes off and gets plugged in, which was what he was wanting the whole film, was to let Moose free.
So where does Act 3 start in this film?
Well, we're not quite there. So that's when Deon. So they're back at Deon arrives to warn that Chappie is going to be destroyed by Moose.
Yes.
And then at that moment, Moose arrives, and of course, it's been remotely controlled by Vincent. And we have this kind of and Hippo arrives at the same time, doesn't he? To get his money or whatever whatever it is. And so while all that's kind of confronting, to me, this is the all is lost, which is when Moose arrives and just cut his head off, or his body
rips America in half.
Rips America in half, and you just kind of see him ripped in half, throw across. So to me, that's the all is lost, like someone dying, like that's the death scene there. And then the Dark Night of the Soul is an interesting one here. Is then it's not so much someone sitting on the side of the road; it's all that action that's unfolding there.
Yeah, everything falls apart.
Everything is falling apart. The world is breaking apart, and there's a small glimmer, which to me is to get Chappie. Well, no, that's right. Deon gets shot as well, doesn't he? And so Chappie wants to get him back to the headquarters.
Yeah, and this is
to me the plan to break into 3.
Well, this is lovely because this is where Chappie is finally inspired.
Yeah.
By this, you could sort of say, the loss. His Yolandi, she dies after this, but just before that, Deon is shot, and Chappie. He's learnt the value of life, like the whole "are you sleepy" bit with the guard not wanting to die, and then Deon dies. And this whole time, it's all been Chappie doesn't want to die. Chappie doesn't want to die, and a couple of things have happened. The guard confronts him. He sees America die, and now his creator Deon is shot and is dying. Chappie suddenly realizes there's no point in me living if other people, if I don't take action to help other people, because their life is as important as my life. Like, why does my life take precedence?
Correct, yeah.
When I have the power to save them, I should do it.
So that, to me, is the break into 3. Is actually him then, because then his plan is, I've got to get Deon back to their headquarters.
And this is where I had an aha moment about Blomkamp and his movie style. Because I think, I'm not sure we've really necessarily spoken this on the podcast, but I know we've spoken about this in person before, so perhaps we should let our listeners in on this little secret conversation we have. But what we've talked about as...
we have a lot of secrets, sorry, I don't know which one.
as creative people who are creating stories and in writing, the real secret to being... to writing a story to completion and enjoying the process is to follow your muse, follow that element which really takes you and impresses you. And those who have listened to enough of these podcasts would know that one of the things that really gets me is, I suppose, spiritual existentialism, which is odd because I'm such a scientifically minded, logical sort of person.
Some might say they do go hand in hand.
Any of these movies where there's this hint of religious or spiritual enlightenment from, even Event Horizon and Infinity and, any number of these sort of things where we're talking birth, death, resurrections and that. I love that. So that sort of redemption of the soul, if you like, which offends me at a base level, but I love it. And so I have to create characters that do that. Blomkamp here, I can see it is a dissection and investigation of empathy. So we see all that in District 9, where we start with Vickers is a very apathetic character.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, he's not just a little bit empathetic, he is literally one of the aliens.
Yeah.
And so he is walking in their shoes. He's the embodiment of empathy.
Yeah.
In here, we have Chappie is this embodiment of the next evolution of humanity or intelligence, but suddenly realizes how what it's like for these people who are dying.
Yeah.
Because he's dying, he sees it, and he has that empathy. And when we do Elysium, again, this is explored in another facet of his things. And does he have another? He's got a horror movie that he did recently as part of O
There's
Studio.
a lot of shorts, isn't there?
The O Studio, which has got a lot of. I saw a couple of those. They're really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting. I get a feeling that this is one of the things.
This is the theme
He
likes to
loves to
explore.
look at how people can view the world from different people's viewpoints.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my little aha moment. You sort of get there analyzing things. You go, oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, definitely. Ooh, that's a lovely present. Thank you, Neill, for that lovely little Easter egg in the story.
Ninja, though, wants to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
To and draw Moose away.
Yeah, to enable them
to allow them to escape.
Yeah.
But it looks like he's going to get just annihilated. And Yolandi goes, nah, not going to let this happen because, I love
their relationship.
Ninja.
Yeah.
He's cool, apparently. He's just not as well developed, perhaps, socially as what he could be. And she, in fact, does save him, but gets blown apart in the process. Yeah. And it is... at some point here where then Chappie, there's a bit of a struggle. The Moose gets blown to pieces.
Yeah. Well, I think Chappie had a bomb ready to go, that he plugged into him when they earlier fought, but didn't detonate it. So after that, he kind of overpowers him, comes being able to grab the detonator and blows Moose apart. And
isn't this whole scenario where all their plans fall apart because now Deon's dying, Yolandi's dead.
Yeah.
It's like the reversal.
Yeah,
as we're talking about. It's like the plan that they had and the glory that was going to be, it's just not there because they were following what they were doing before. They're going to do something different.
They do. So then Ninja helps them by, fanging it to the factory. So that's the thing with Ninja. He's been all in about himself.
Yes.
Whereas then now he's willing to help Chappie and Deon. Like, why help this Deon character? Because he never liked him. Chappie was only there to do the heist, but no, he returns the favour and helps. So he's had growth as a character too.
Yeah.
And so, the plan is get back there. When they get to the factory...
Hugh Ball is there.
Hugh Ball's there. And basically Chappie storms into his office and beats the living daylights out of him.
I love...
It's a good fight scene.
I love this fight scene. It's very Terminator.
It is.
But we're on the side of the Terminator. And the thing I love about this, he goes all Kill Bill and chopping and chucking and all the rest of it.
Throws him through the ceiling and all
sorts of things. But what I think is beautiful is that at the end, Chappie again realises, killing him doesn't help anyone.
No.
His life has value too.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a dirtbag, but, killing him doesn't achieve anything.
Yes.
It doesn't further Chappie's goals at all.
No. And then he, in a dying Deon sort of moment, he comes back and transfers. They realise that, Chappie comes up with the idea that we could both transfer your consciousness across into the robots. There's the crash test dummy scout. And Deon's like, no,
you need that body.
You need that body. And so he does that. He transfers Chappie across, doesn't he?
No, he transfers Deon.
Transfers Deon across. And it works.
How cool would it be for Deon, though, finally being in a robot?
I know, it'd be awesome.
I mean, his whole life's dedicated to creating these things and creating intelligent robots, and he gets to be an intelligent robot.
He does.
And then, of course, we get the thing where you go, oh, no, now Chappie's going to cark it.
Yeah.
But no, they manage to find a nearby scout.
Yeah.
And in the nick of time, everything's coming to a crunch because they're trying to bash the door in, and Chappie finally dies on the bench. We don't know if it succeeded. And old Deon goes charging out and jumps out with his robot body into the alleyway where there is a scout that stands up. Yeah. And it's like, Chappie, Deon! And they high five and cuddle or whatever it is that robots do.
And then run because,
and then run like crazy.
Yeah, because the police are circling in. But then this is where we have a further extension, which is, so this is where we have the final image. It's a lovely little image. Ninja's sort of effigy, so to speak. They bury her in the ground, and he's burning memories, photos, whatever, from a box. And the bottom of the box, he suddenly lifts out a USB, which says Mummy's consciousness test backup, something like that.
If you went back 20 years, it would have been a floppy disk.
It would have been a floppy disk, but it's a USB. So if you know what that is, they're sort of going out, aren't they? And so it's like, he's like kind of stares at it in interest. And with that, then we have Chappie building a female robot.
Yeah, basically hacks into the robot factory.
Yeah.
And I like this because the beginning shows the robots they're suppressing violence.
Yeah.
But it's got this nice music playing, and the robot that they create for Yolandi is, it's got a pleasant female face and it looks peaceful.
Yeah, it does.
And the whole idea here is now, these robots she's not created as a warrior. No. She's created as...
He's recreating her, but just as a
person.
As a person,
Yeah.
Like Deon, but he's getting to build her. And it ends on a shot of her opening her eyes.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful shot to end on. So terrific. It's a great film. Neill has, hit sci-fi out of the park again. And it is interesting, isn't it? Because you mentioned horror. His next feature film is a horror. So I don't know if he's going to deviate now and go off into the horror genre.
So he did... Demonic was the one he did in 21.
That one came out last year or something.
A year ago or so.
Yeah.
It wasn't well received by critics. I don't know. Maybe he's just getting his legs in horror.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway.
It's interesting though, he's going from clearly science fiction, and I've looked it up, I found it. District 9 was Peter Jackson's consolation to Neill, because Neill was supposed to do the Halo movie.
Halo movie, yeah.
Halo movie got canned. It's now come out as a series on Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be quite good. I'm not subscribed to that, so I'll have to wait. And I'm sure I'll see it eventually. But
that was the story at the time, because Peter Jackson had seen some of his short films and loved like that documentary kind of rough and tumble point of view sort of shooting that Neill has done in all of his films. And
so he's done his three big sci-fi, and each of them have been, to one extent or another,
they've all been successful, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Worthy of giving him more money.
Yeah, you'd think that they want to keep working on it. But anyway, so let us know what you thought about the plot points and whether we hit the right mark. We had a little bit of disagreeing on a couple of areas tonight about Chappie, about the midpoint, about the inciting incident, about breaking into 2. So, let us know what your beat points were. And we would love to, hear your thoughts about what you thought about our area, our breakdown. So we do like to do a ladder idea where we are just putting out the suggestion of, hey, if you're going to watch Chappie, why don't you watch these couple of films around Chappie? And it would be like rungs of a ladder. Not so much an order of preference overall, but just more steps in the science fiction world. And there is so many out there. We are up to episode 81, so we've got a lot of rungs on this ladder now. For me, Surrey, I am going to put this in. We like to do them into the little trilogies or 3 steps. I am going the West Australian sci-fi I Am Mother, and then Chappie, and then I have platform as the next one. So that's my little trilogy of sci-fi. I feel that, of course, I Am Mother and Chappie, there's quite a few similarities there, both AI, the social science of AI. And then obviously I think and then just as a bit of a palate cleanser, I think the platform would be a real nice mix in there. So if you haven't seen the platform yet, please go and check it out. That's a very disturbing sci-fi, but it's a great one. So yeah, I sort of feel the two I Am Mother and Chappie, probably there's some similar things going on, and then platform can just rinse your mouth out afterwards. How about yourself? What was your little trilogy of recommendations?
Look, I'm going to have to go in here with Revolt. So Revolt is also set in Africa.
Yes, it is.
But the robots there are an invading intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to shift this ladder around a little bit. But I think you should watch Chappie, Revolt, and Tau.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Because again, I do like pairing up there's three different views on this intelligence going in there.
Fair enough. So let us know how your ladder's plodding along, if you're following along at home, or, maybe you've just joined us on this particular episode and you want to start building your own ladder. We've given you some suggestions there. So hit us up. Let us know on Instagram, Facebook, or through our website. What is your ladder looking like? So are we talking about social sciences? Are we talking about artificial intelligence? Are we talking about blue boats tonight? Sorry. What on earth are we talking about? Yeah, you gave us the parable.
The red blue boats that my grandfather's axe. Yeah. Millennial Man.
That's right. Sorry's going to talk about that for the next half an hour. Go for it.
No. I'm going to be talking about transhumanism.
Oh, okay.
Which is what Chappie comes to at the end here, because there's been a whole bunch of thoughts. So the idea of transhumanism is this thought of what are humans going to be, or what can they become? And we've obviously got, there's natural evolution. People are saying we're not really evolving much anymore because we have reached a point where our technology is able to remove most of the stresses which cause evolution.
Yeah, right.
There are people who disagree and say that, in fact, our environment, as our technological environment, requires and favors certain traits.
Yep.
There are some people, for example, who say that we are favoring traits which fall on this spectrum, now the autism spectrum, due to the requirement to be able to focus in on or think orderly like a computer, being able to do that sort of thing. That all aside, have a quick look at this. So transhumanism as an idea of us being able to become more than ourselves through, it's like human created change of humans.
Yeah, right.
Obviously, you see it in Chappie, but we'll start off back in the 1920s, where there was a very... I'm gonna go on a limb here and say you'd probably classify this guy in a movie as a mad scientist, because
Ilya, the big white grey hair.
Ilya Ivanov was this Russian fellow in the 1920s. He thought, wouldn't it be good if we could mix humans and chimpanzees to create a new form of human.
Awesome.
Moving beyond humanity. You can't, as it turns out. But that didn't stop him from trying.
It's a thesis.
Because, our DNA is, 98, 99, like we're as close as we can be with bonobos, I think, is the closest thing we've got. It turns out that little deviation in DNA is a big change.
It's probably important.
There's also an experiment done in the 50s of raising a chimp in a family, a human family, with a human child.
Yes.
And raising the chimp as a child.
Right.
And how much with nature, how much is nurture, chimps are very close to humans. Are they so chimp-like because they're raised in family groups of chimps? Yep. And would they be more human-like? The answer is no, they're still chimps. I mean, obviously it's a slightly oddly behaved chimp, but nonetheless, it turns out that no.
Still wanted to rip its mum's ears off.
Yeah, you're still going to rip your lips off. Don't worry about it. Keep away from those things. So the 1920s saw Ilya Ivanov, humanzee, I think they call them, is the idea. These series of experiments, nice. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
Don't worry. It was artificial insemination. Don't have to worry about the peculiarities of how you're going to arrange such things. They didn't, have romantic dinners or any of that.
I think Doc missed out on an extra part of the experiment there then.
Yeah, could you romance a chimpanzee? Yes. Yeah, how do you seduce a chimp? Could a chimp seduce a human? Unknown. Well, I'm sure there are some people who've gone long enough without romance that they might squint at a chimp and I don't know. if she cooked a good dinner.
Yeah, that's right.
This led, however, into the 1930s with particular interest in eugenics. So eugenics as a field, it's before the 1930s, obviously. It's been around for quite a while. In fact, we practice eugenics in our farms.
Yeah.
And the fact that golden retrievers and chihuahuas and wolves are neither, we've done that. We have taken animals and plants with characteristics that we like and we bred them and then kept the ones which exhibit that characteristic the most.
Yes.
And we keep doing that. And over generations, you end up with, a retriever that naturally wants to hold things in its mouth and just...
And Labradors that think they're wolves.
And Labradors that think they're wolves.
But not really wolves at all.
But, really bad wolves.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that, you could do the same thing with humans, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You could take...
So, why not?
And the purest concept of eugenics is not especially creepy or wrong, but because it makes a lot of sense. And people have done it anyway, where they sort of go, looking for a healthy, strong partner with which to create healthy, strong children.
Yes.
But of course, in the 1930s, there was a particular group of people who took eugenics, and then the natural consequence of this is that, if we're going to create a new breed of humanity that's better than humanity, then we want to, find the best specimens to breed for that and get rid of the trash.
Yep.
The sad thing, of course, as we know with humans, is that we're incredibly complex creatures, and it's really, how do you judge what is the good parts? And as it turns out, like the golden retriever example, beautiful dogs, very friendly, calm, peaceful, hip dysplasia and arthritis, and laryngeal paralysis. Are they stronger? No, turns out, they've got certain traits that we like, but there are other traits that we don't like, and you've just kind of exaggerated both. And so it's the same with humans. You try and do it with humans, and you get, we want people with blonde hair. So, yes, you could breed people to have blonde hair by picking blonde-haired people and making them breed with blonde-haired people and try to get the most blondest people.
But then they all turn into Instagram influencers.
But do they just sit and take selfies the whole time with duck face? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's nothing to say that having blonde hair is in any way a better trait than having any other color of hair. Right. I mean, but of course we all know what happened in the 30s going to the 40s. And if we don't know, you should probably go check a couple of history books or play Wolfenstein. So out of that though, we came to the 50s and the 60s, and we're looking more at technology now because, so the whole eugenics thing, it turns out that's far too complicated, and there's no way of judging what the best traits are, trying to make the smartest, strongest. That doesn't mean they're the better person.
No.
They're not going to be better for the human race just because they've got a higher IQ. I mean, there's plenty of people with high IQs who are terrible wastes of time.
Yeah.
Like myself. Well. Okay. As you can see, there are problems with all people. Including myself, especially myself, maybe. So Bionic Man, the TV show, the $6 Million Man, is an expression of that idea, this belief in technology joining with us to make us stronger and better. And we have got prostheses and so forth, which are helping people who otherwise have lost or don't have a leg or whatever, or they lost their hearing or lost their eyesight. And this isn't without its own, complications or problems. As, the deaf society, they'll sort of say, well, they have a culture.
Yeah.
Like there is deaf culture.
Yeah.
Which is distinctly different from hearing culture. And it's, you go and a lot of people in the deaf culture might sort of say, it's not like you're curing us.
No.
You're changing us, yes.
That's
right. And some would welcome a change, but some would not. It's you can't push this and say this is definitely the better thing.
That's right.
But it is an option that is available, which I think is important. We need these options. We need to be able to know that, I could, if I lose a leg, I could get some sort of a replacement.
Yeah.
Or I could adapt and grow. And there are people who don't get prostheses, and they thrive without them. I'm not going to say they enjoy it, because do I enjoy having two legs? I wouldn't know, but does a person with one leg enjoy having one leg? They have it, they adapt, they thrive, and that's their life.
That's right.
So we're kind of reaching a bit of a limit on the technology of replacing parts, but we're still going there. We talked about mind-computer interfaces to allow people who are locked in to be able to communicate. And in 2012, we got CRISPR. So this is that next point of, okay, so breeding people and the rest of it, that's kind of problematic. But what if we could give you a toolkit and you could make your own choices about what you want to do to yourself? Just like here's a tattoo needle and a piercing gun, go to town. If you want to tattoo
surgery.
yourself, if you want to get a nose job, do it. Yeah. Okay, here's your genetic toolkit and go on it. And CRISPR, there's an excellent documentary on Netflix at the moment about the discovery and use of CRISPR and what it is. Because a lot of people always, and myself included, are like, what the hell actually is this?
Yeah.
And the letters CRISPR stand for, I can't remember what it stands for, something like a sequential repeating pattern or something. But it doesn't really matter what it stands for. But what it is it's an enzyme taken from bacteria, and RNA, which is what you want to cut the DNA at. To insert your own bit of DNA, you need to first chop the DNA at a certain point and then introduce a new piece and let it incorporate. Because our DNA has natural capabilities built into our cells to repair itself. Like it gets damaged all the time and it repairs itself all the time. And what it will do is, if it gets a break at a certain point, and it will find another bit of DNA floating around and that'll fit and it'll copy it in. And if we introduce our own fixed bit of DNA, like we sort of say, here's the gene that causes sickle cell anemia, we chop that out, and then we introduce a repaired bit which doesn't have that broken bit, the DNA will just incorporate that. And now you've cured it. And the enzyme bit is called Cas9. It comes from bacteria, and that's bacteria's defense mechanism against viruses. So the bacteria keeps inside of its own DNA little codes of viruses it's encountered and survived, and it loads these into this Cas9 enzyme, which is this it's a catalyst. It's an enzyme is a bit of biology, chemistry that will rapidly cause a chemical reaction to occur. Yeah, right. And in this case, it goes along, and where its little piece of RNA matches with the virus DNA, it latches on, and when it latches on like that, like it connects, the enzyme goes to work and breaks the DNA chain at that point.
Yeah, right.
And our viruses are very simple. They only have a strand of DNA. So if you cut it, it dies.
Yep.
Like it's not like our cells, which have multiple copies and can repair itself and really cool. So it's great at killing viruses for bacteria. But it means now we can take that same enzyme and cut our DNA and introduce what we want. And we've got like a little toolkit now that people can use. And various people have done biohacking to try and improve themselves. One guy cured himself of lactose intolerance for a few weeks. Which is, that in itself is pretty cool. I'm lactose intolerant. So I became that way. It is very common. It's about 75% of people will at some point become lactose intolerant to some degree or another. A large proportion of East Asians are lactose intolerant from a very young age.
Yep.
Western Europeans less so because we evolved consuming cow's milk long into adulthood. And so that was a bit of an evolution there, which does show that we do keep evolving.
Yeah.
CRISPR is all well and good. It's almost it's just like eugenics. It's almost impossible at the moment with our current knowledge to know what effect we're going to have. Yeah, we spoke about the twins that got born, the clones, not the clones that they got genetically modified to be immune to, the HIV. We don't know what that's going to do to those poor kids, and we can't be doing that to kids. That's not right. You can do it to yourself. Why not? Do whatever you want to. Poke your own eyes out if you want. I mean, I'm not going to stop you. Well, I probably would actually if I saw you trying it. But so CRISPR has moved on. People then talk about, what about virtual reality? What about computers? What about Chappie being able to capture consciousness and transfer it into a robot form? This is super interesting. And this is one of these areas that people, again, much like genetic engineers, believe it's entirely possible. Not now, because we just don't have the technology. And in fact, it's entirely possible that it's not just the logical structure of the connections of our brain, which we could, given enough technology, we could model.
Yeah.
But it could actually be the fundamental chemical makeup of our brain.
Yeah, that's right.
Which gives the consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's something that's going to have to be tackled at some point.
Yep.
But it's just a matter of progress.
Yeah.
If we keep going, we'll be able to create maybe something like a replicant, which is biologically enough that we can imprint our consciousness on it and it becomes us.
Yeah.
And in Chappie, that's what they do. They sort of go into these scouts and we have this interesting case where in The Machine, the movie we're watching, the fear was that the artificial intelligence becomes smarter than us.
Yeah.
It will create artificial intelligence children that replace us.
Yes.
They're so far ahead of us that humans become obsolete.
Yep.
Chappie takes another look at it, which is that Chappie is smart enough to be able to solve that gap, how to get the human into a computer. And that's what he's doing. He's offering that to us. We now have that option. Again, the people will sort of say, oh, no, human culture is its own thing. And it is.
Yeah.
You can choose to do this. Some people will. Some people won't.
I mean, Chappie took on very human elements, didn't he, in his growth?
Yeah, and it would become a distinct, it would be a stepping change. Like it would be a step.
Of course.
That changed. And eventually, yes, humans would probably become a minority because these robots don't die.
Yeah.
And on it goes. But we're kind of moving towards that already. There's a bit of a paper in this psychology. So on the PubMed, which is one of my favorite places to go, it's the NCBI. So it's it's Institutes of Medicine. It's a government organisation for the United States. It's got World Psychiatry. So there's a paper here by Firth, Taurus, Stubbs, and a bunch of others, which is called The Online Brain, How the Internet May Be Changing Our Cognition.
Right.
So what we're talking about here is we are extending ourselves into the internet. The internet is becoming a part of our knowledge base and our intelligence. And you can see this. Some people do not know how to Google. Like they're fundamental. They have not moved into the internet.
Yeah.
And you can tell that because you go onto Facebook and someone will sort of say, they'll ask some question of the people on Facebook. And the answer is you literally copy and paste that into Google, take the first result. There's a description of exactly what you want and a video which demonstrates it and a podcast about it. And here's a newspaper article. You're like, why are you not just doing that? Why, and the answer is they have not moved into the internet. Whereas myself and probably the majority of people with the internet, particularly with, say, smartphones these days, your part of your knowledge base is the internet. even myself, I like to read and memorize things and just remember stuff. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the time I'm finding I actually just remember the search term I used to find an article. Mm-hmm. Or I remember there is an article and I remember the highlight abstract of it, knowing that at any time I can just do the same search, find that link because it'll already be purple. Mm-hmm. It shows that I've already clicked on it before. And there it is. There's my knowledge. Yeah. And then I can follow those links in that page to on and on and on to get as much, get down to the textbooks and the primary sources. I know that, so I don't bother memorizing it.
Yep.
In the past, people had to remember it.
Yep.
Or but if we look at it even further, though, and we all know about this, it's that Facebook and Amazon and Netflix, Spotify, they're starting to suggest stuff that we'd like. Mm. They start to know that's because a part of our personality is already living. It's imprinted in the fabric of the internet. Yeah. And you can have all the blocking, all of the whatever procedures you want to do.
Yeah.
It won't change a thing. The only way to not be on there is to not be on there.
Yeah.
As soon as you use the internet, in fact, even not even being on the internet, you are partially there because other people know you, and they're using the internet. So you've got a shadow profile that is out there. Mm. And there's some companies that are looking at going, what if we take a person's print in the internet and we chuck it through AI and produce a chatbot that you could ask questions of, and it will answer, making what you might call, artificial intelligent intuitive leaps on what would Surrey say. So we feed all of my posts, all of my podcasts, all of my work, everything into this AI, and now you got a chatbot, and so I'm dead, but you can still ask this chatbot and it will respond like me. So people who knew me would go, yeah, that is something Surrey would say.
Yeah, right.
Of course, it's not me.
Yeah.
Or is it? I mean, how far away are we from the point where, in fact, we've got deepfake technology, where we can do voices and images, videos. How far away will it be before we can actually have a virtual version of ourselves, simulacrum, homunculus, if you like, of ourselves?
Yeah, I think the algorithm's a bit far away, but it's really interesting if you took that digital imprint of everything you've inputted onto the internet and if they filtered all that down, what that chatbot, what that digital version of you would be like.
I know. Well, there is a company that does that.
Yeah.
I don't know how extensive they are.
Yeah. And then if you just fast forward that,
I'm almost curious to do that because unfortunately to use it, you've got to give them access to all of your social media and all of your YouTube and your browsing history. It's a fair old invasion of privacy.
But it's interesting, isn't it, to do something like that if you had someone pass away?
Well, that's what they're sort of...
That's probably what they're pitching
at there is like... So you can kind of ask some questions to be a little bit...
Like you could imagine, like we had a good friend suddenly die when she was 30. She died overnight. It's basically she died of adult SIDS is really what happened to her. No warning, nothing. She just died in her sleep. So shocking for her parents and all that, like a 30-year-old girl dead. And so you could imagine, they kept her Facebook alive, and you could imagine them trying to take all of her internet data and they would be interested in that. Wouldn't you be interested in it? It's that old conundrum, isn't it? It's like, would you bring someone back from the dead? Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
But digitally.
Yeah, and I think we are going to get to that point.
And that's that movie, isn't it? Replicants in a way.
Replicants there's a couple other movies I can't remember, but it's same sort of thing where your online persona becomes a person.
Yeah. And isn't that what Zuckerberg kind of wants to do with the metaverse thing that he wants to do?
Yeah.
Isn't that his kind of dream? Like, not so much the dead thing, but like shift everything online, that you're an online persona.
Yeah.
A little bit like that movie that we have done, the Bruce Willis, Radha Mitchell one that we did. They're like clones walking around, like they're all good-looking kind of versions.
Yeah, that's the replicas. Surrogates.
Surrogates,
yeah. Replicants is the clone one.
Is the Canaries ones, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So that I don't know if that's I don't think that's what Zuckerberg wants. I think he wants it in the internet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it'd be interesting. I mean, is the future of humanity going to be basically a fusion reactor powering a massive computer bank of a virtual
digital versions
world
of us? Yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said for that. I mean, you could basically launch that in orbit around the sun with big solar panels that's self-perpetuating with some, automated machinery keeping it going for forever. And, I know it's that's a movie in itself. There's probably several movies and books already about that. I'm sure of it. There's Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah,
I think actually is kind of like that. The humans come across this alien craft, enters into our solar system, and people go and explore it, and they find it's sort of this data bank of a civilization which can recreate itself. Like it's like a civilization that's sort of frozen in time in these data systems, but then they've got automated processes and this big ocean of organic soup.
Yeah.
Which can then recombine to create stuff. They sort of, research it and find that, Earth, our solar system is not its final destination. It's passing through and traveling on. But their theory being that it's going to go somewhere, and then you basically restart. It's like they put their civilization on pause, froze everyone and everything into these memory banks, fired it off, and when it gets to its destination, it will rebirth and recreate what got frozen.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, that's transhumanism, and there's so many different
angles of that. Yeah.
Angles of that about longevity and all the rest of it. But it's fascinating to think of that we could, within not 10 years, not 20 years, maybe 100 years, maybe 200 years, we could begin to the point where we're having realistic artificial intelligence. Musk says 2029 will have. That's just nonsense. We just it's artificial. We just don't have the capacity for that.
No, it's still a bit away that way. But anyway,
But I think it will get there.
Yeah,
we will eventually
we'll get there. We'll be there.
I sadly I don't think I'll be around to see it unless I can freeze myself.
Freeze your consciousness.
Yeah, in a useful way. Maybe my online, metaverse simulacra will be there.
That's right. So that brings us to the end of Chappie. Let us know what you thought. Hit us up on our website, Facebook, email, Instagram, Metaverse.
Get on a film festival at spacerange.com.au to check out the timeline, the dates, get some tickets. And get involved. You want to get the tickets before you turn up. Yes. Otherwise, you'll be embarrassed.
So give us a 5-star rating, write a review. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get podcasts, anywhere you find Space Brains, let us know. Leave a review. That always helps. Link us around the place. Share us. We're getting some good feedback from a couple of different listeners, which is fabulous. So keep that up. We love hearing your ideas about where we're going, and if you want us to head in any other direction or even film suggestions, you can send it our way. So for our next episode,
I reckon we should keep going with Blomkamp.
We're going to keep going with Blomkamp.
I think we should do the Elysium.
Why not? Let's do it. Elysium.
Because there's, I think that we will find, and I watched this a while ago, so, I could be a bit wrong, but I think we'll find some parallels between Elysium, Chappie, and District 9.
I think we will. I look forward to that.
And we'll be able to pick apart a successful filmmaker's, maybe some of his ideas and processes, and use that to inspire ourselves.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see you at the festival, and we'll see when you listen to us post-festival on our next episode.
And you'll hear who won each of the categories.
That's right. They'll be all available.
Ooh.
All right. Catch you later.
Bye-bye.